T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to another conversation sheltered in place. I'm really excited about this week's fellow converser, and we'll talk about him in a second. But you know what I wanted to say is, we started out this program of conversation sheltered in place to help us navigate the COVID-19 crisis. Not only navigate it, but get through it stronger and more unified than ever. But we're changing the focus a little bit, and we're still navigating a crisis, but we're navigating the crisis that is known as 2020. So we've got a lot of things that we're dealing with right now so far this year, and there's talk of all these things that could happen. Talk of a Great Depression and all this kind of stuff. But I think what's pretty clear is that we are in the midst of a great transition. We are transitioning from one state to another, and it's really important that we have these conversations so that we can make sure that the state we transition to is a state that we'd want to be a part of. And so I hope this message finds everybody healthy and well and dealing with everything that we're all having to deal with. And like I said, I'm really excited to welcome our fellow converser this week, Michael President Anderson. He is an amazing young man that I got to meet not long ago at the UN, and his bio is pretty spectacular. So I'll share that with you now. Michael President Anderson is CEO of MPAC Solutions. He's a 2008 Harvard graduate with a degree in government and has been awarded Harvard's Hero of the Year for his community work. After graduation, he worked at Credit Suisse Investment Banking, where he won the Douglas L. Paul Award for his commitment to excellence as a minority in finance and a mentor to other exceptional Black professionals. Anderson created the first diversified financial services platform centered around Black culture. Different than typical finance executives, Anderson endured a 10-year career as a professional hip-hop artist and social activist. In addition to appearing at illustrious forums including the Grammys and MTV VMAs, Anderson became known as hip-hop's financier, aka president. As a financially savvy, award-winning hip-hop artist and filmmaker, he has inspired a nation of hip-hop entrepreneurs on MTV and mentored some of the leading minority entrepreneurs in the world. Through touring the world as an artist and filmmaker with deep connections on Wall Street, he built a business infrastructure for people of color and creative entrepreneurs lacking access to funding. Anderson emerged as an elite millennial voice representing diverse communities. Last year, he won New Jersey's Tech Council Award for creating minority venture capital pipelines. And Nokia Bell Labs also honored him as a leading artist on the fringe of creativity in entertainment and technology, utilizing culture and science to influence and propel successful businesses. Anderson launched Impact Holdings, LLC, to offer business development services and has assisted many minority entrepreneurs to build billion-dollar businesses and become leaders of industry. He designed Impact's virtual business center for social impact and minority businesses, connecting disadvantaged entrepreneurs with public, private, and philanthropic contracts and capital. Anderson is also the lead minister of C4 Global Community that is centered upon his mantra, culture times capital equals community change. The church launched in Charlotte when Anderson chaired community affairs for the NAACP. And Anderson was asked to chair the Global Black Student Orientation, which became a leading organizing vehicle for Black youth in elections and activist causes and focused on developing the next generation of leaders. Anderson has spoken and appeared at multiple venues, including South by Southwest, Harvard, Columbia, Princeton, and Caltech universities. Anderson lives in Newark, New Jersey, where he is developing New Jersey's premier urban real estate project, Impact Tower, and Brick City Innovation District. But before we bring Prez on board, I want to share with you just an excerpt from one of his music videos called American Legend, and we'll play that now.
I think that the most important thing to remember is that most endeavors that are truly worth something will often have a very high failure rate associated with it. I think the trick is to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
Miles High International.
Fires up. I see my daddy get killed on the Western. Shootout in Newark. Cut got arrested. 12 years old. Mama got sick from infection. Pray every day. God give me vision that I'll be a legend. If I die for my squad, then you die for my squad. Cause we living forever. Look at the shit that I came from. How did the money not change it? I had plans, got rearranged them. Most of these rappers is faking. I do not take no vacations. Re-elected like I'm Reagan. Nigga.
All right. So sorry we had to cut that short, but we want everybody to welcome President. Hey, Prez, how's it going?
Hey, what a blessing, what a honor. It's just the synchronicity and the time and just this is a blessing to be here on Juneteenth, and appreciate you and what you're doing on this platform, all those esteemed guests. And I also want to say just thankful for the ancestors and everybody that paved the way, that we have this opportunity for collaboration and truly bring out the essence of what America really should be.
Yeah, and one thing that I also want to mention that wasn't part of your bio is Sunday is your first Father's Day.
Thank you. Brand
new father, Gracelyn Trinity Michelle, born 4.5 months ago.
Exactly, February 1st, 2020. She came into she landed, so to speak, and yeah, I mean, you're a father too, so you know, and you know how much of a blessing and responsibility it is to create a legacy, and I'm just extremely humbled and grateful to for all of this, to be a father, to be a dad, to be an American, to be a free Black man, and really bringing out the best in what our world can be, a global citizen, humanitarian, and man, I can't express how just humbled I am achieving this escape velocity with you.
Made it to orbit. All right. So a lot of folks know you, but a lot of folks may not know you, and you have an incredible story. Can you give us a version you feel comfortable with sharing of your story and how you?
Yeah, it's so funny because even in that first minute of that song and that video, you saw just like who I am, what I'm about, and I told you in that first line, 5 years old, I seen my daddy get killed on the Western. I was just talking about my origin story. So funny enough, I was I'm a Jersey guy, and we're in Newark, and I grew up pretty much around this community. However, I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia, the home of Thomas Jefferson, and in Albemarle County, University of Virginia. And unfortunately, it's probably gotten more famous the last couple of years for the incident, in a terrorist situation that happened a couple years ago. But that's the homeland, VA. And then on my mom's side, they're from Georgia, South Georgia, and East Georgia, around the coast. Actually, it's crazy because I spent some summers growing up where Ahmaud Arbery got killed in Brunswick, Georgia. So to be honest with you, Ron, my American experience, I don't even like to say it starts with me. I don't all the accomplishments and everything I've done, I'm grateful, but my story really starts with other people just enduring and surviving in American South and making their way to New Jersey and cities like Newark, that really developed in the Great Migration and surrounding communities. And yes, I'm grateful that I worked really hard in Jersey, especially to be a leader, man. I just want to make my community proud, to just be 100% honest with you, right? Like when I was 14 years old, I can remember 14 years old, was it 2000? So this had to be like 18, 19 years ago in the summer. pretty much this week when I came out of 10th grade, I got a job as a community organizer with the NAACP, the largest civil rights the oldest civil rights organization in America, a couple blocks away on Commerce Street in Newark. And I can remember for me, like I was making $250 a week, so that's probably not life-changing money. But when you're a kid and somebody tells you that they're gonna pay you to organize your community and go basically meet people and learn about American history, Black history, and just converse and give your people voting empowerment rights and organize a community, it was like a dream come true. So, like I said, my story is really just testament of piggybacking off of great people, great organizations, and hardworking people like you know those that came before me. My mom was a nurse at the hospital right over here in downtown in Newark, the University Hospital. So I always like watched her grow up organizing and just serving, and coming from that type of servant ethos, I really had a desire to serve my whole life. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, like, I think what happens, or like what happened a lot of the time, is that if you just do really well in school, and let's say somebody like me, I end up going to Harvard, you get exposed to things you can only dream of. So obviously, any kid that grows up, without money in America, especially that if you in a single parent home, or you see certain elements in your family, your community, whether it's incarceration or just different diseases and violence, you have a desire to create something greater. So I got exposed to investment banking in a roundabout way, just family that had different like roles within finance. But I would say, to be honest with you, when I went to Harvard, I just got exposed to just a level of wealth creation and what finance could really, really do, and entrepreneurship could really, really do. And started just the long way, just internships, Merrill Lynch, now it's called BlackRock, and asset management to Credit Suisse, and then Morgan Stanley. And then by the time I graduated, I had, a lot of different amazing opportunities. But I ended up doing the banking. Not that I wanted to spend my whole life doing it, Ron, but more so just to create some wealth, gain a skill set. But if I can be really honest with you, I always had the music in my heart and the community in my heart. And even when I was growing up, I was always like a little rap star, just in like my little area in Jersey. And there's a big battle rapping culture out here. So hip hop and rapping and battling, which now is like being a debater, being eloquently speaking at venues around the world. I really honed that just in these streets, learning how to utilize my voice and making words rhyme in order to carve out my niche and create an identity for myself. So all those years rapping, creating an identity for myself from high school to college. When I was working in Wall Street, I remember summer 2009, definitely had the most money I ever had. But I'm looking in the mirror, I'm like, dude, this ain't you. What's up? Like, you got to figure out how to look in the mirror and love yourself. So I went on this long journey for about a decade, figuring out how to marry the community that I care about, the family that I care about, and the art and the culture that produced me in many ways, which was, again, humble beginnings, but also a servant ethos with that access to capital and access to wealth, which in finance and from an institutional perspective is not necessarily about serving or making the world a better place. And so over the last couple of years, when I created MPAC, the whole mission has been to democratize access to wellness and to wealth creation, and really put together the worlds of serving and having an impact with being able to afford and live and experience life, America, the world fully, not from a standpoint of desperation and hopelessness. Right. Ensuring that as many people as possible, regardless of how they born, where they born, their skin color, etc., have access to really experience what's possible.
Yeah. So I think you made a really excellent point in that, you kind of gravitated towards finance, and capital and money, for lack of a better word, is the rocket fuel to progress, right? And so we can't have sustainable solutions to the challenges of our communities if they're not financially sustainable. And so that's why I think that that's a good path that you went on, because you have access to sustainable solutions through that. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us. I want to remind everybody that we'll see your comments and your questions. So ask questions along the way, and we'll do our best to address them.
God bless everybody. Thank y'all for joining in on this Juneteenth, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers as well.
That's right. That's
and
right.
Happy Father's Day to you, Ron.
And happy Father's Day to you. First time. So you got any big plans?
We're gonna have a little cookout, at my mom. She's organizing something, just a couple dads in the family getting together. So yeah, man, it's just a blessing to be honest with you, Ron. Like, I can remember going out in Newark to like soul food restaurants on Mother's Day, and you would see that Mother's Day is packed. You can't get anywhere if you ain't come there early. And then Father's Day is like crickets historically in our community. So, I'm excited to just, fortunately and God willing, and work to be on the other side of that.
Yeah. Well, it changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, man. Just
besides sleep, I mean.
Oh yeah. But you know what? Having a purpose, and I was telling you today, right? So for those of you who don't know, today, a dear friend of mine, she runs an organization, the Gym Project, and our nonprofit is the Jersey Grown Foundation, which really working with youth. And this is all Global Black Student Orientation, just the next iteration of it. But she had invited me to the Youth March today, which happened up the street over here in Montclair, which is right here. And it was so incredible to see, thousands of high school kids, everybody wearing a mask, socially, complying. Yeah. But kids of all different colors is unified, man. I think I'm really hopeful and optimistic that we're living in a paradigm shift, and these youth out here just inspired me to just take it to a whole nother level. And even see them, I could see my daughter when I saw them young women giving speeches and getting energetic. I saw my daughter. I saw the future. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And hey, Daria Musk. Daria Musk has popped in. She's watching. She's an incredible singer-songwriter. I should put you guys in touch with each other. So you got a lot of shared talent there. But you're in the march, which is just another example of the crises that we're dealing with right now. And I think we all understand at some level or another how interconnected and interdependent everything is.
Amen.
So all the racial tension that we see right now is affected by COVID and vice versa, and the economic pitfalls that we're seeing, and every other thing that's coming down the pipe all interacts and with it. And so like even in the march, you're marching, but you're being socially distanced because of the other crisis that's embedded in the crisis. And
sanitizer everywhere.
Yeah.
Sanitizer every 30 seconds, it feels like.
Yeah. So what kind of outcomes are you hopeful for during this latest crisis that we're in right now, and this latest situation that has led to unrest?
I think the low common denominator, right? Like the low hanging fruit that is the discourse is really like no one wants to feel like they're gonna get killed by people they pay taxes to work with. Like that's the basic thing, right? Like no one wants to feel like, I don't want to get pulled over, and I refuse to even have to consider the fact that my presence is gonna compel somebody to shoot me. But having been in those situations across this country, outcome number one, there has to be some type of justice and reform into where police can't kill people and just nothing happens. I think the days in which, hopefully we pray the outcome is justice in the sense that like we just can't keep getting shot by police. Like I can't keep having these experiences which carry so much weight and mental trauma that it's so normalized in our culture, but unpenalized within the system. So let me just give you just a brief example before I get on my other aspect. And here in New Jersey, the youth incarceration rates and mass incarceration is 6 times the national average and twice as bad as the next closest state, right? So when people talk about mass incarceration, this state is literally by far the worst for incarcerating youth. And from an outcome perspective, we know that like the only people that do bad things aren't black boys. Like that's not possible that black boys are the only wrong people in the world or wrong people in the state of New Jersey. However, given that we're over incarcerated, over criminalized, over medicated, and over indexing for everything tragic, we need to have a human first response before the default criminalization of the black man and person in this society. So that's just concept number one. And I'd love to hear what you think about that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things you said is you related the fact that everything feels so normal, that we take this all as the accepted status quo that is unchangeable. And what that leads people to believe, because it on the surface appears normal, I'll put normal in quotation marks, is right, that there's not a problem. And so, I mean, just to quote Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he said, "We cannot succeed by denying what exists. The acceptance of reality is the only place from which change can begin." And so I think what we're seeing right now is an awakening realization that we actually do have a problem. I mean, many people, I don't know what the percentage is, I'd be, taking a guess, but whatever the percentage of people that realized that we had a problem before, that I think that percentage has greatly increased over the last few weeks. And it's starting to really dawn on people that, oh, wait a minute, there is a huge problem here. We have a systemic problem of bias and a systemic problem of injustice in this country, and it's something that we need to deal with. And we can't deal with it without taking the first step, which is acknowledging that there is an issue. And so I think we're at least doing that now. So
definitely. And I will say, true to even how we met, economic justice is really how I'm expending a lot of my energy. So yeah, for instance, just a bit more statistics. The statewide contracting spend in this state for women, minority, and veteran businesses, last I checked, was under 3%. And from a pension standpoint, if you can imagine all these state workers, that do the everyday work of making New Jersey great, their pension system, about a year ago, last time I measured, it was around 80 billion in that division of investments fund. Now, the numbers that's effectively managed by black managers that gets deployed into black companies is 0. And I'm looking at institutional finance, meaning our public institutions, our pension funds, our private institutions, and these are the big, in this city, like the Prudentials, the Goldmans, the Amazon Audibles, and the philanthropic organizations that manage cumulatively across the globe approximately $70 trillion in assets that deploy effectively 0%, less than 1%, to black businesses and businesses. From an outcome standpoint, we know that interdependence, collaboration is vital in that diversifying how capital flows to entrepreneurs, into communities, and wealth creation flows into all of the aspects of society creates a better society. So from an outcome standpoint, I'm literally wearing my heart on the sleeve. Like I put this shirt on because I went to Australia about a year ago.
I can't see it. Can you, your name? Oh, cool.
Indigenous. It's the Australian Indigenous mentoring experience. And shout out to AIM. They took us out to Wollongong and to Sydney, and it was an amazing experience because Australia is obviously the other side of the world from New Jersey. But when we got there, we encountered just hundreds of indigenous youth that felt like no one in the world understood their struggle. Now, mind you, this is mostly African American, so we're like, oh, we feel you. Trust me. We know what it's like to be ignored. We know what it's like to be marginalized. We know what it's like to be forgotten, and in your own land. So, from a low hanging fruit standpoint as well, just recognizing that this is a global crisis. And although, in America, we kind of are looked as leaders, and maybe we have that cultural factor which amplifies these factors. However, London, Paris, even in Germany, Germany really inspired me as well. I'm seeing it in Berlin, and if we just address history and the facts, like Germany isn't necessarily known for being at the forefront of in the last 100 years of human rights.
Yeah.
However, their march for Black justice was just like incredible and inspiring. So, what we do here in the shadow of Wall Street, in New Jersey, New York City, in terms of democratizing access to capital, contracts, diverse wealth creation, I think is going to reverberate through the capital markets. I mean, it has to, all around the world, the same way that every other trend that influences the world largely comes out of American culture and specifically Black culture.
Yeah, that's, I mean, another really, really good point is that this is not just an American crisis. It's a global crisis. And I don't like to use the word global because we don't live on a globe, right?
Yeah, forgive me. I'm sorry, bro. Spherical, orbital.
Planetary. It's a planetary crisis. Because when you use the word planetary, it brings the biosphere of our planet into the conversation too, which is part of it. We don't live on a globe.
Go there. I gotta get Pentecostal on you. Go ahead and say that, bro.
But we're seeing demonstrations in all these other countries around the world, not just because they have sympathy for what's going on in the U.S., but they have their own issues with it as well. And it's really interesting that you brought up Germany, because I had a conversation last night with a good friend who is in Germany right now, lives in Germany, a German friend, and he was saying, and I agree with this 100%, that Germans, when they think back, 50, 70 years, are judged on what they did during World War II and the period of time leading up for World War II. And those folks that were living at that time that did nothing were part of the problem. They're as guilty as everybody else. And we're living through a similar time right now where we're faced with issues that if you're not doing anything, you're part of the problem. And so if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I think that was a really powerful conversation that we had. But the other really good point that you brought up is the economic aspect of this, how there's a huge disparity in access to capital for businesses, for you went to Harvard, but you're the exception, not the rule, right? I mean, so there's probably many people that grow up in underprivileged areas that don't have the resources and don't have the opportunities that people have in a more affluent area to go down a path that would lead you to the type of career that you get from graduating from Harvard. And so, that's an issue. I've done a lot of work around the world, a lot of humanitarian work, and I've worked with the poor an awful lot. And I know that in some folks, there's two really negative mindsets. One negative mindset is we've always had the poor, and therefore we will always have the poor. That's having a segment of your population that is in poverty is just how humans live, and it's an accepted thing. So that's not true. So it is possible to lift every living person on the planet out of destitute poverty. That's true. The other fallacy is that a lot of people think that people are poor because they're lazy. And that is not the case at all. What I experienced was hardworking, conscientious, honest folks that were trying their best to eke out an existence, and circumstances beyond their control prevented them from, rising up the ladder, if you will. And so what is becoming very obvious, not just because of the latest racial tension, not just because of COVID-19, but it's been very obvious for a number of years, is that our system is broken. And we're not going to be able to fix the problems within the broken system. We need to rebuild our system, and we need to build a system that works for all. The status quo is not working for everyone. It works for some people, a very, very few people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And until we have a system that works for everyone, we will not going to be able to progress and prosper and evolve. And all we will ever do is slap Band-Aids on our problems and put temporary solutions in place. And so in order to have long-lasting change and progress and build a future that we all want to be a part of, we're going to have to deal with these systemic problems, and we're going to have to build a new system.
No, that's it. I mean, what you talked about, going back to your friend and in Germany and just the silence, I think I have to say that there was definitely a lot of white children out there today, and even converse with there's one father who happened to be a white man, and his slogan was it was like Dads for Radical Change, and he was talking about his daughters. So I want to say that, I mean, at this point, just the allyship is just everything, right? Because at the end of the day, people know these issues, right? People know that disparities and inequity exist. At the same time, if it's only Black people speaking, we need that, and that's great. However, I spent some time in Austin last year, and I spent a whole day at the LBJ Presidential Library, and I could just see the impact of when LBJ was talking to Hoover, who ran the FBI, about the kids and the white kids getting killed in Mississippi, and it was just different. And so I say, even with this, right, it's one thing to discuss racial injustice and have Black people just saying, okay, this isn't fair. But now the beautiful thing is that we are seeing, to some degree, and let's pray and work that it lasts, a critical mass of other cultures like, this is BS. Like, we gotta do something. And I definitely think we gotta drive it. And I'm just being 100%. Like, at the end of the day, we gotta solve this as a community, right? And all of our voices are necessary. However, I think reverse mentoring is very, very important, and leaders and institutions need to look at how diverse and how much this youth energy is multicultural, and specifically saying, like, Black lives are really important. No anti-Black racism.
Yeah. And
I just hope that some of the most powerful people in our society can just look at what their grandkids are talking about right now.
That's right. That's right. We have to listen, right? And so you and I are both eager to listen, right? But we also, we're talking about silence, and speaking about silence, we haven't gotten a single question from anybody yet. So we should listen to some questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I know I got a lot of friends out there chiming in. I know who you are. So ask some questions. Join this conversation. Jane said, yes, we need everybody to stand up for racial injustice, right? And this is not a white problem or a black problem. This is an American problem. And if we extend it even broader, it's a planetary problem, right? And so the only way we can solve problems like that is to solve them together. There's no specific group that's going to solve this problem. We have to solve it collectively as a planetary community. That's it. That's the only way it's going to be solved.
From a planetary perspective, right? So
that's right.
I'm interested in like the spiritual implications of off balance, and just from your perspective, and you seeing this the planet in a different way, just aligning our vibrational shift in a more upward trajectory, solving for humanity on a higher vibration, right? Like, is it just what we do as leaders and influencers and those that are driving the ship impact the rest of the world? Like, or do you see just like the critical mass and billions of people ready for this paradigm collectively?
Yeah, I mean, if to talk spiritually, I guess, I mean, we can't solve the problems that we face by treating the symptoms, right? We have to go after the underlying root cause of the problem, and the underlying root cause of all of our problems, every single one of our problems, is the human ego, and we have evolved as a species to develop an ego that only survives within us by convincing ourselves that we are completely separate and separate from other people. We're separate as individuals. We're separate as groups. We're separate. That's how the ego survives. And the ego could be a collective ego too. It could be a group ego, which is an extension of group think, which can be even worse. And so what we need to understand is, yes, there is something distinctly individual about you and I. And that's what's most obvious, and that's what our ego lives off of. But underneath that seeming separation is an underlying unity that is masked within our awareness through our own ego and our collective ego and our national ego and everything else. And so until we realize that, and until we find the tools to break down the false sense of separation that feeds, like I said, feeds all the problems that we face, that one thing, being able to transcend our egos, to be able to realize that not only am I a distinct individual, I am also a part of a collective intelligence. Not only am I a life, I am life itself. I am part of life itself.
Pardon me for interrupting, brother. Did you find God when you went to outer space? Like,
I think whatever faiths and beliefs I had when I launched in space, I think they were confirmed and maybe grew during my time in space. But there were seeds planted there, seeds of truth that took many, many years to blossom. And I don't mean to plug anything, but I have a book that's coming out called Floating in Darkness, which the whole theme of the book is breaking down our barriers and our false sense of separation. So John Fabian says the sins of our ancestors are still causing pain. Yes, that's certainly true. So, I think seeds of truth were planted that and that exposed, that were in a sense light. Light was shined, and some of the darkness that it exposed was the lies that we tell ourselves about how we are this person, we are this race, we are this profession, we are this nationality, we are this religion, we are all these things, and that defines our identity. Well, that's not our identity. Those are important things, or they can be important things.
Right.
But it's not our identity. Our identity is a human, and the other thing that's really clear from space is that we are really one human family, and that. And people, that's a cliche, it's a buzzword, right? But what does that really mean? If in its most basic terms, it literally means, if you go back far enough, we all came from the same mother and father. We are literally all related. But on a level that's beyond the physicality of DNA, there's a deeper unity that is normally beyond our awareness and is what leads to a lot of the violence and a lot of the discrimination and injustice that we see in the world.
Let me ask you something, bro. You hit on something that's so that's so real. You said you don't believe that there will always be the poor amongst us, right? Now, when you spoke, I heard the scripture, right, which is in the Bible, in the New Testament, where it's saying that Jesus said, you know, you'll always have the poor, but you won't have me, and this is just a moment. And then I found myself quoting that last week when I was thinking that and just accepting, like, yeah, there'll always be people with more, people with less. My hope in my work is that it's not necessarily skewed towards race as much as it is in America. But did you mean, and are you implying essentially creating a kingdom of heaven in an earthly realm, or I'm sorry, in a planetary realm?
Earthly is okay. You could say earthly. Wow, there's a lot of questions in there. The first one, let's talk about scripture and religion real quick. And I believe that religion can be a vehicle that points to the truth. I don't think that religion is the truth. And I think a lot of times where we get into problems is when leaders and followers of a certain doctrine mistake the vehicle towards truth for truth itself. And the doctrine becomes more important than the truth. And what that leads people to do is take things that are in sacred scripture and take them literally, like word for word, literally. And if you take the statement that Jesus made about you'll always have the poor, and you take it in context of his entire ministry, you can see that he's not professing that we should always have the poor. Of course not. He was talking to a very skeptical group of people that did not understand that he was going to have to suffer, and so I think the danger is to draw too many out of context conclusions out of that. And the other part of your question was about the heaven on earth. It depends on what your definition of heaven is, and I think that it is within our power to live in a world where everybody's needs are met, where everybody chooses for themselves how they want to contribute to society, that everybody has enough food to eat, all the basic needs are met. Everyone has access to education, everyone has access to knowledge, and there is not this widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, because we're finding that information is the most valuable, powerful source on the planet right now, and information is not even shared equally, or not even close to being equally. And so there's a big disparity and injustice in how information is shared across this planet. That's why efforts like open source and having more transparent business practices and all that kind of thing is having tremendous impact.
Wow. Now what you said about not taking the scripture literally in a certain sense, I think as our world is under reconstruction, our country's under reconstruction, mentally, I am in a process of deliberately and intentionally attempting to destroy the limiting ways in which I've experienced life in order to manifest abundance. And this has been like a multi-year journey, really a lifelong journey, but in terms of it consciously, deliberately, I would say over the last 5 years. And what you said about access to information, I was just going to add that even if some people have the access to the information, just the ability to believe, and then believing in yourself is just a whole nother realm. So I love you to speak to just like believing in yourself, right? Like just like the mental state that you had to have to go from Yonkers to however many millions of miles in orbit. Just like what was in your head? You just knew you could do it. Like one in a million, one in a billion. We talked about the lies of the ego, right? And the ego
believes many lies. Actually, the lies are what keep the ego alive. And an ego doesn't mean necessarily that you think you're better than anybody else. An ego is basically what you identify yourself with, right? And if you identify yourself as somebody who can't accomplish anything, you're not going to accomplish anything. And if you believe that lie, and I remember when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut since July 20th, 1969. The day of the first moon landing. And as a child growing up, people would ask me what do you want to be when you grow up, and I'd tell the truth. I want to be an astronaut. Huh?
They tell you to do something realistic.
Well, they would say they would pat me on the head and they'd say, "Oh, that's nice, but what do you want to do if you can't do that? What do you really want to do?" Right? I mean, right. So if I believe those comments, then I would say that it's impossible. So I think one of the paths to being able to have a future that you'd want to be a part of is to navigate through the truth and the lies. And most lies I think come from ourselves. We tell ourselves, many lies a day, like we can't accomplish stuff. So we got a question from Jane Miglior. What can I do in my daily life that will help break down racial injustice in our country? Any thoughts on that, Prez?
Several things. I can tell you what I do. I have to start my day in seeking those truths and seeking the highest power. Seeking God, just to ensure that I'm operating in my highest mind. So, whatever your practice is and your faith, for me, like I said, man, I read the word every day just to get anchored in something that's bigger than me. And obviously, I'm not saying that, I'm a sinless being, right? Like that's not possible. And I know all things is possible, but that's not what I'm on, and that hasn't been my journey. But getting anchored in the truth, I follow Jesus in the light in a way, and I seek to also just listen to people and acknowledge, like you said about the ego, like I don't know everything, and what I may know on Thursday could be totally unended on Thursday. And I'm gonna give you a couple of tangible examples of organizations in a second, but I have to say this, right? You were playing that record American Legend, and the last line you played was "Reelected like I'm Reagan," and Jane Honorable Mr. Rosebush, who recommended and brought me to that conference, being a former Reagan assistant and advisor. Like again, I never thought that I would be friends with somebody from that administration. I never thought that ideology. I never could see that, like getting close to somebody. You follow me?
Yeah.
From that sort of quote unquote school of thought. But I've had to upend what I thought was a presidential legacy, a human being's capabilities, and even American history, because I just had to admit, like, yo, you don't know everything. You feel me? There's something way greater than you. Whatever you think you knew, be grateful for that. And I'm sure you feel me. Like I'm grateful for my specialized knowledge that gets me to be able to offer tangible solutions, but accepting that God's plan is infinitely bigger, and like sowing into that humility, surrounding myself by people that's smarter than me, like actively pursuing relationships with people that are world class. World is not the word. I'm sorry. Planetary class.
You can say world. Just don't say global.
No, I'm trying to get right, bro. I want to get right. But actively, Jane, to answer you, actively seeking people that look different, and that are best in class, and being able to accept that we all maybe believe the wrong thing. And, even to quote Reagan, the best part of American history is yet to come, right? We are the ancestors of, our great grandkids generation. They're going to say what we did today, this conversation. And to answer you, my organization is called MPAC. So I break what I do down from an entertainment standpoint. I make music, I make art. I do my daily reflections on whether it's film, whether it's social media, on creating content that breaks down these lies, right? So I'm grateful to be on this podcast because, you know, we live in such a polarized world that even me coming together, this is a start. Broadcasting this message, this communication, this planetary perspective is a start. And I know you were like, oh, kind of ashamed to plug your book, but I'm gonna plug your book. Your book is a blessing, bro. That was confirmation that like I'm not crazy for having an orbital perspective. Like this is how we're supposed to think. We're not supposed to see limits in this binary, this foolishness that we all got tricked into thinking. We're supposed to see the bigger picture. But Jane, impact is our mission is to impact the not the world, the planet. And you can plug in, you can reach out to me. Ron has all our social media at Prize Quadrillions, and we have a litany of different organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, that we support that are all about racial, social equity and justice in whatever community you are. I'd love to help you find people doing the work if you want to get 10 toes down in the community, because that's the power of you know what we've been doing. I ain't gonna lie to you, Ron. It was points in the last 10 years where I had like this spiritual validation and confirmation from the Most High, but like 5 years ago, especially when I was in Charlotte and I said, okay, we're going to do the Global Black Student Organization and I'm volunteering this NACP and I'm doing this for free. And there's so much conflict that involves when you're really a leader and you active. I was like, man, what am I doing? Like my friends that I went to school, they all most of them just, you know, got nice jobs, made nice money, chilling on a bunch of stuff. And like I'm doing all of this for free community work. But now I just see in conversations like this and what you're doing and floating through darkness, so to speak, you know, to where the only validation I had a lot of the time was from the Most High. I guess it's all been worth it. And, you know, I'm grateful. I want to be in contact with everybody that's in the chat room.
Yeah.
You know, these people, I don't yet, but everybody that's going to be involved with this at Press Quadrillions, reach out to me.
Jane, I actually went to high school with, and we've got another high school friend, Cornelius Goodwin. He's got a couple suggestions. One is to research, another one is to vote.
Hey.
Another good friend, Leland Melvin, who knows as well as I do how ridiculous we all look like from space, since he's been there several times. Good friend of mine.
Salute you, Mr. Melvin. God bless you. Not be complicit when racist acts. I think that's the biggest thing, girl, because like people like, hey, it takes a lot of courage to actually do that.
Yeah, sometimes. But well, I don't know, you know, I think at sometimes it might, but it shouldn't, right? I mean, you shouldn't have to take courage to stand up for what's right, but sometimes it does. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you shouldn't, but again, you know, Ron, you're a brilliant person. I'm sure everybody on here is highly intelligent and, you know, at the bare minimum seeking intelligence. When I think about inequity, right, and injustice, especially in Newark, you can just look at the skyscrapers. Okay, who owns this skyscraper? Okay, where did they get this money? They got this money from the public sector and the private sector. Okay, no, there's somebody looking like me, regardless of resume, degrees, whatever, come and try to implement that same work. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah. So I would say it does take courage, and I just had to accept, you know, for my own mental health and sanity that, you know, everybody isn't going to be for change. Like, it's not convenient. It's not comfortable. It's not materially rewarding at first. It's like the opposite. You're constructing a whole new society. And so, you know, I appreciate everybody. I see somebody signed in and said, vote. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Jane brings up a really good point about the different perspectives, right? Because, you know, a lot of times I just scratch my head because I see, like, you tune into the news, right? And you'll see two people on opposite sides of an issue yelling and screaming at each other, not realizing that they're actually in agreement, that they're saying the same thing from a different perspective a lot of times. So I think a great percentage of the stuff that we argue about is simply the lack of a perspective. And that's why we look so ridiculous from space. Is because when you zoom out to the perspective that you get from space, all of our differences blur into insignificance. They become ridiculous. It becomes undeniably obvious that we're all in this together. And COVID-19 should have been the wake-up call and the call to action, because literally every single person on the planet is affected in one way or another by COVID-19. There is no, we're all in this together is not a cliche. It's obviously the truth of the reality of the world that we live in. So,
but let me chime in if we still got time about the COVID. Yeah. And I think why it's important that we radically reassess and reallocate our wealth. I mean, there's no way around the American model of capitalism. It's just a fact, man. This society just worships money. Like, money is God to the overarching ethos of how our society, especially in New York City. I could see the World Trade Center in Wall Street from where I'm sitting right now, right? Like, that's just what it is. And when I had that human love first perspective, I was living out of alignment without accepting that money is God, not necessarily deliberately, intentionally to a lot of these people, but just in terms of priorities. Like, I seen somebody in your comment said that Leland said you could lose your job if your boss is complicit, right? So just realizing that people like to get paid every 2 weeks, right? Like, nobody wants to be homeless and miss meals. And so if your boss wants to get paid every 2 weeks, and what you're going to do or say is going to threaten that, unless there is a shared safe space and really a force compelling of systemic change, we disincentivize people from actually making a difference, right? And actually just feeling doing the necessary work of making themselves short-term inconvenient, so to speak, from a material perspective, versus really living in harmony and creating harmony in something that's bigger than just what our eyes can see or experience.
Yeah. And I'm going to pop this up here too, because Leland talks about the need to have more people breaking bread together to fully understand each other. And like I said, Leland's a very close friend of mine, and I've heard him tell the story many, many times about his experience on the space station, breaking bread with the Russians and people from other nations, and how instantly all of the things that we were conditioned to believe about each other's cultures, vanished, and all that was left is humans enjoying a meal together. And I think Leland means this metaphorically, that we need to break bread together. In other words, we need to do those things that define what it means to be human together a little bit more. And that's when you start aligning perspectives, right? That's a tool that we use to align perspectives. So
that's real, bro. I appreciate y'all. Trust me. Actually, funny enough, I read about Leland from my cousin Muchika Cooper when I was out in Pasadena with her through the years. And shout out to her. I know she's in Florida now, but she definitely encouraged me to learn more about everything that you guys have been doing through the years. And I just want to say, for everybody that took the time to just listen to us, it's a blessing, it's an honor. And I am proof that everything that I thought I knew could be flipped on its behind. And I really would just encouraging everybody to seek that highest. And if you listen to anything I say, man, just God loves y'all, and the best is yet to come. So
that's right.
Just allowing us in your hearts and your times and your minds.
That's right. Well, Prez, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We're going to have to do this again. I don't think we were, a quarter of the way through our conversation here, but we're running out of time. But thank you for taking the time to be here and having this really conversation. Thank you for your honesty and digging deep. And also, thank you for everything that you're doing to help make life on our planet as beautiful as our planet looks from space. You are really making a difference, and we thank you for that. And I hope you have a wonderful first Father's Day with Graceland, Trinity, Michelle, and the rest of your family. And we'll hope to see you soon.
Likewise, definitely, man. Thanks so much, and God bless you. God bless everything you're doing with a blessing, with an honor. America is better for you. The planet is better for you. And last thing I'm gonna say, thank everybody with the comments. I see all y'all, Jay Thomas, Daniel, Leland, Thomas, and John Fabian. I think you said treat others as if they're your office partner. I love that as well, right? If people, again, in this society where humans can tend to worship what puts money in that bank account, if we respected each other like your rich uncle, what would the world look like?
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody who tuned in, and thanks for all the great questions. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. See you, everybody.
Peace.